Welcome to The Explainer. I'm your host, and today, think of me as your coach. You know, the encouraging kind. We are going to completely demystify the 2026 FAANG hiring process for serious Android engineers, drawing straight from Yadgirbeg Kamilov's comprehensive roadmap. Look, if you're aiming for Google, Meta, Amazon, Apple, or Netflix, the rules of the game have fundamentally changed from just a few years ago. We're going to break down exactly what you need to know, phase by phase, so you can land that offer. Okay, let's dive right in. Here is the absolute biggest wake-up call from most candidates right now. You might think an Android interview is, well, all about Android. But the reality? You're evaluated as a software and systems engineer first. Roughly 70% of your evaluation is based on core software engineering, things like data structures, system design, and your communication skills. Only about 30% is specific Android knowledge. You really just can't hide weak engineering fundamentals behind a pretty app interface anymore. So to turn all these overwhelming requirements into an actionable journey, here's our 6-month chronological roadmap. We're starting with the reality check, moving into foundations for months 1 and 2, tackling performance in months 3 and 4, hitting behavioral prep in months 5 and 6, and wrapping up with the final hiring signals. All right, Section 1, the 2026 FAANG reality check. There is a massive trap waiting for you right out of the gate, and that's surface design. Stop over-focusing on UI, the newest Jetpack libraries, or those complex compose animations. Now, don't get me wrong, these tools are totally great for your day job, but fixating on UI at the expense of software engineering maturity and raw problem solving, that's a fatal mistake in a 2026 interview context. It's kind of ironic, but you can actually bomb your entire interview while trying to make a beautiful drop shadow. Interviewers want to see how you think, not just which APIs you've memorized. Here's your 10,000-foot view of the 6-month study schedule we're following today. You can see the progression here. We start with data structures, algorithms, and Kotlin in month 1, shift gears into Android internals and Jetpack Compose by month 3, and finalize your prep with mock interviews and behavioral focus by month 5. Pacing it out like this completely prevents burnout and builds your skills in a really logical way. Let's zoom in. Section 2, months 1 and 2, foundations. This is your exact data structures and algorithms hit list. You need to know arrays, hash maps, trees, graphs, sliding window, and dynamic programming. But really look at the target benchmarks here, because this is absolutely crucial. You do not need to kill yourself over hard LeetCode problems. Let's be real. There's nothing quite like the panic of a failed LeetCode compilation when you're on a tight deadline, right? Those hard problems are just for pattern exposure. Your true benchmark is easy to medium mastery. You need to be able to solve a medium problem in under 30 minutes, writing clean code, and clearly explaining your time and space complexity. During these first 2 months, you also need a complete Kotlin deep dive. Fun fact, simply writing Java-style code using Kotlin syntax is now considered a huge red flag by a lot of FAANG interviewers. By 2026, they expect you to write clean, highly idiomatic Kotlin code. You should naturally reach for coroutines, flow, sealed classes, and immutability. You're being judged heavily on your code quality and how well you utilize modern language features to manage state and concurrency. Moving right along, Section 3, months 3 and 4, performance. In this phase, you're going to face performance-based prompts like, hey, why did you choose Flow over live data here? Interviewers aren't just looking for code that compiles anymore. They're testing your trade-off reasoning. They want to know if you truly understand how these choices impact performance, memory, and thread management. Your answer needs to show that you intuitively grasp the underlying mechanics of the tools you're actually using. And you know, this trade-off reasoning directly applies to core Android fundamentals, especially Android process death. Your knowledge here has to be deep, not just broad. Senior candidates really stand out by explaining how an app survives process death, how view model scope works during configuration changes, and exactly how state is flawlessly restored. Because if your architecture crashes just because the OS predictably reclaims memory, you won't pass the interview. Now, Jetpack Compose is totally mandatory in 2026, but again, it is evaluated through the lens of performance. A typical interview question cuts straight to the chase. Why is this composable recomposing too often? You've got to understand recomposition, stability, state hoisting, and side effects. If you're writing compose code that causes unnecessary UI updates, that's a massive red flag for your performance awareness. So the absolutely crucial point is this. FAANG loves engineers who think about performance by default. You should be super familiar with the concepts tracked by the Android Studio Profiler. You need to anticipate memory leaks, completely understand how to prevent application not responding, or ANR errors, and know how to optimize recycler views to prevent UI jank and frame drops. Performance can't be an afterthought. It literally has to be baked into your first draft of code. Also, in months 3 and 4, you're going to tackle mobile system design. FAANG apps are incredibly data-heavy and resilient. You'll be asked to design things like a messaging app or a massive-scale newsfeed. That means you need to confidently architect offline-first systems, design really robust caching layers, handle pagination flawlessly, and manage data sync and conflict resolution. You don't need a perfectly perfect answer. What you need is clear, logical data flow thinking. Oh, and before we leave the technical prep, we have to talk about testing. Testing maturity is often the exact signal that separates a mid-level L4 offer from a senior L5 offer. It's not just about writing a basic unit test. It's about knowing exactly when to use fakes versus mocks, and how to write deterministic asynchronous tests for coroutines and flows. All right, the home stretch. Section 4, months 5 and 6, behavioral. FAANG companies heavily evaluate your impact, and to do that, they rely on the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. Listen, if you walk into a behavioral interview and just ramble about your past jobs, you will fail. You have to use this structured framework to clearly articulate the context, what you specifically were tasked with, the concrete engineering actions you took, and the measurable business results you achieved. To actually prep for this, you need to draft STAR stories for highly actionable scenarios. You should have stories ready to go for a major production incident you handled, a time you had a technical disagreement with a colleague, how you mentored a junior developer, a complex architectural decision you owned, and how you navigated a missed deadline. Write these out, practice them out loud, and refine them until they're crisp and really impactful. Finally, Section 5, Final 2026 Hiring Signals. Behind closed doors, the real hiring committee checklist looks exactly like this. They are checking off clear problem solving, clean and maintainable code, deep performance awareness, trade-off thinking, and a true ownership mindset. But notice where is not on this list. They aren't checking off buzzwords or whether you've memorized the absolute latest framework update. They are hiring for true, fundamental engineering maturity. Which brings us to this powerful closing quote from the source material: engineer first, Android second, a systems thinker always. This has got to be your ultimate mindset shift. If you approach your preparation just trying to be a good app builder, you are aiming way too low for FAANG in 2026. You absolutely must elevate your perspective to that of a systems thinker. So, I'm going to leave you with a bit of a provocative challenge. Will you discard your 2019 playbook and start your 6-month transformation today? The roadmap is clear, the benchmarks are set, and the timeline is drawn. The only question now is when you'll take that first step. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. And hey, I highly encourage you to audit your current study plan right now. See you next time.